If you focus on purpose, outcome takes care of itself.
Yeah.
And we know that when we've gone wrong, it's when we've looked at outcome, not purpose.
Welcome to the Little Black Book, the Entrepreneurs Podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Greg Hobby, who's the co-owner and CEO, which stands for Chief Eating Officer, of the Taylor Holmes Hospitality Group. Founded by Greg and his wife Kate, Taylor Holmes is a fine food catering company that is expanding into cafes and restaurants with locations at SAHMRI, Flinders Medical Centre, below North in the basement of the Grand Hall of the Freemasons building and the Bridgewater Mill. In this episode, you'll hear Greg talk about the importance of values in family business and how they provide a foundation and guiding light to all their decision making. How the impact of COVID was a green light for their business and how it created opportunities for new ideas and product development that they could implement and move through the business. He talks about how a trip to London at the age of 22 taught him to push his boundaries, trust himself and his team, and to create a safe environment for his family and his team to be able to grow. He also talks about how setting goals is a key pillar to their family business and how it helps them create a vision for the future and help them implement action plans to achieve that vision. And finally, he talks about the introduction of a family board and the use of his mentors and how they provide a structure for decision making and governance through their family business. Welcome to the Little Black Book, a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs who provide their first-hand experiences to help others learn and grow. This podcast is brought to you by Altitude Advisory. Altitude Advisory is a modern business advisory firm helping business owners build a better business for a better life. Favourite movie of all time?
There's two, Andrew, if that's okay.
Yep.
Morning of the Earth, which was in 1971, shot by Albie Bowson. It's a great surfing movie, but a great lifestyle movie.
Yeah.
I still watch it a lot. And of course, Love Actually.
Love Actually, like the Christmas classic.
That's the one.
So, it's a bit romantic and it's a bit out there. Tell me why that's made its way to your favourite list.
I just thought there were a whole series of, at the beginning, non-connected, funny, human things. And they all sort of come together at the end. I thought it was a really interesting idea.
Yeah. And, there's some great actors in there and, the music and, the whole Christmas theme and everything. So
very true. It all did come together. I thought, very good.
Yeah.
Good idea. Well made.
Have you got a book, mate, that as a child or a young old adult had a real effect on you and why?
Yeah, I do. When I was 19, a wonderful man that I worked for called David Delmont gave me a book called Think and Grow Rich. It was the first time I'd ever really had any exposure to a personal development book.
Yeah.
And it was the title that made me think when it said think, not act or not, be greedy. So I read it and read it and read it. And you probably know that book contains a secret. And for the life of me, I couldn't work out what the secret was and still can't, which probably explains a lot of things.
No, but it is one of the most, downloaded and read books of all time. So Napoleon Hill. So,
yes.
Can you remember, what were some of the key takeaways that you took out of that?
Great, thank you. It focused on real people. So every chapter had a story about, at that time, a very successful person, not always financially successful, but who had achieved a lot.
Yeah.
And that it delved into their processes intrigued me then and still does, even 20 years later.
Yeah. No, it's cool. And it's interesting, in terms of that title, the thinking bit that you just mentioned, Greg, and then, I know you went into a corporate career before we got into the catering business, which we'll talk about in a sec, but, your business was called Outthinking.
Yes.
So, is that just a coincidence or was there a connection to that?
Yeah, very much a recurring theme. I've learned to believe in the power of thought. I like the saying that says, most people say, I'll believe it when I see it. And in fact, it's the other way around. We see it when we believe it. And believing comes from thinking.
Yeah.
And so it continues to intrigue me, that thought of thinking.
Yeah. Most transformative travel experience you've ever had, and what made that so?
Before you were born, Andrew, in 1975, I went to London and worked there for a year. And I was very young, and it was the first time I'd ever had exposure to big city, to big behaviours, to big opportunities, and again, really big thinking. And so I felt in the year that I worked there, the transformation with me, had I not gone, may never have happened or would have taken a long time.
Yeah.
And in 1975, London was just such an extraordinary place to be, having only ever been in Adelaide.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of all of those things. And they spoke in a funny way, and they drank beer at lunch. It wasn't a bad place at all.
Well, you can drink beer at lunch now.
Oh, really?
We'll get to the catering in a minute. I thought, there's definitely alcohol at least one of your places I know of.
Very much.
Yeah, no, that's great. And, I suppose London in the 70s then, I was born in 1972, so I was only 3. So London in the 70s compared to Adelaide in terms of, how old were you then when you went? So,
22.
22. So, the key differences that you sound, and how much did that push you out of your comfort zone or stretch your boundaries?
A lot. It really did a lot. The most important thing there for me was that, for some reasons I didn't understand, Australians were very popular in terms of the workforce. And so I had an opportunity to work in 3 different advertising agencies, took one, and I just don't think I would have had that opportunity here. But then the manner in which I was treated, as was everyone else who worked there, was firstly based on trust in their talent. And so I genuinely got to do things I wouldn't have done here. By that I mean to work on jobs, with big challenges and a real very, very different environment and way to work.
Yeah.
So, gosh, that had such a lasting effect on me.
Yeah. I think you touched on a really interesting point there, about, trusting your team or giving them the opportunity to, fail and learn and then progress and get better. Has that been something that you've taken back, firstly with your kids and push them to get out and stretch, and then also with your team since then?
It has been a recurring theme again, yes. And what we call it is safe. So certainly, obviously, as parents, you ensure your children are safe. But we meant in the context too of grow here. There's nothing wrong. If you've got an idea, it might be weird, and often they were. But you're safe here to develop that. And then we take that into the workplace. Obviously, in food, creativity is a massively important thing, but equally so is the delivery of it. So the service part of food is massively important. And we want everyone to have the confidence to develop themselves knowing they're safe.
Yeah.
And to your point, you're right. We do all make mistakes, and they do make mistakes. But none of them are fatal, if you know what I mean.
No.
They're all about, well, it didn't work, but it might take us to somewhere else in our behaviour.
Yeah, it's one of my old business coaches, said it was all about failing fast. Get in there, have a go. If it doesn't work, what did you learn? Rehash it, go again. And I expect that the food side of things is particularly like that. Not everything necessarily comes out of the kitchen, tasting immaculate the first time that it's made, I'm sure. Very
much. It's another great point you've raised. I also believe the truth that if you get to an intersection, if you get to a fork in the road, pick one and sprint down it, because you'll quickly know if it's wrong.
Yeah.
And we do that a lot with food development.
Yeah.
You quickly know if it's wrong because you get to eat it.
Yeah.
And that's the best taste.
Just sprint, eat it, either enjoy it or spit it out and go again.
Spot on. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a bit like, wine tasting. So sometimes it's not all great. So you, mate, went into the obviously the marketing and the advertising side of things, and Kate, your wife, founded the business in 1990. I guess I want to go down 2 paths here. One, I'm really keen to hear from you, Kate's motivation in terms of starting the business back in 1990, and then also what led you out of the corporate world back into the family business. So do you want to maybe start with Kate first?
Yeah, most certainly. She is an extraordinary talent generally. She has a great love of food. She's a slim and gorgeous girl, but she loves food. She loves preparing it. She loves eating it. She loves sharing it. She's not a chef, but she had done some catering when our daughter was 1. She started doing some catering from home. And she realised very early in that what her passion was could become a business as well. And purely on the strength of her ability as a cook, the generosity of her spirit, truly the sweetness of her nature, she's so kind, there became a business model. So we bought a very small catering company that specialised in sandwiches and very quickly grew it into the business 17 years later that it's become now.
Yeah.
And we kept and protected and nurtured that ethos that she had first started with.
Yeah. So that first business you bought, now, please tell me if I'm wrong here, was it called Pit Stop?
It was.
Pit Stop Catering?
Yes,
because I can remember those vans parked outside my house because we used to live across the road from each other. I always had in my head that had something to do with race cars. Is there any connection there?
None whatsoever. The lady who started it, her surname was Pitt.
Right.
And so that was a logical progression. But so many people thought just like you did.
Yeah.
It's all about racing cars or something to do with that.
Yeah.
Which is why we changed the name.
Yeah. And so Taylor and Holmes, that, and again, this comes back to this, we'll talk about your family in a sec, this great family connection that you and Kate have got, and this legacy that you're creating through the whole business. Tell us about how you came up with the name Taylor and Holmes.
We were talking one evening about the limitations of the name, and that quickly led us to the 2 major influences in Kate's life. So Taylor is Kate's mum's maiden name.
Right.
And it was Kate's mum who taught her to cook from a very, very young age. Holmes is her maiden name, so her dad's surname.
Right.
And he taught her to eat, drink and have fun.
Right.
And so the combination of those 2 things, we did really, truly want to honour those 2 people. And we had also called our daughter Victoria, her middle name is Taylor, and our son Henry, his middle name is Holmes.
Right.
So it was kind of a nod to the past and the future at the same time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And again, just that connection with family, with, the past and the future in the name and the connection that creates. And it's one of the things for me that I've learned from you guys is, that real passion and connection to those values and how they permeate through everything that you do. So it comes naturally. So talk me through the values and the behaviours and how that then, gets to all the team and so on.
I think most of the lessons we have learned and applied to our business, we first learned as parents. And one of the things I know that you and I have spoken about often, we don't think of ourselves as a family business. We think of ourselves as a business family. And I know it's a bit pedantic, but language, as we've talked to, is very important.
Yeah.
So we had this amazing, wonderful opportunity with our children to have a ringside seat on their evolution as adults because they too loved food.
Yeah.
Very early, Henry wanted to be a chef.
Yeah.
Tori, on the other hand, had attended university studying psychology and marketing, which was a great help in the family.
Yeah.
And at dinner one night,
the marketing bit or the psychology bit?
More the psychology. One night at dinner, she said to Katie and I that she was learning more about human nature and human behaviour working as a waitress at Parisi's than she was in a lecture theatre at university.
Yeah.
And we immediately said, great, why don't you then come and work with us? And so she did.
Yeah.
And to her great credit, she started literally scrubbing the kitchen, driving the vans, cleaning the vans.
Yeah.
And is now amazingly our COO and growing into that job more every day.
Yeah, it's great, just that family transition and how that works and the development from, I guess, external roles back into the family business. Now Tori's in the business for a while at least. You've got a next generation on the way, so
we do.
Which is very exciting for you guys. Henry's outside the business in terms of his role as a chef outside. Is there any, I suppose, pressure from you and Kate for him to come back in? Has he expressed any desires? How do you think that'll all play out for you guys?
It's a great question again. We believe in free market forces. So with Henry, he is such a talented, he is a committed, devoted chef, and he works in the Simon Kadachi's group, and Henry's a partner in Melt at Henley Beach and Sea Salt and the bar as well. Each of those three places he enjoys immensely.
Yeah.
This is what we believe. Henry will find things and learn things that he won't learn with us. He loves where he is. He's very devoted to it. And we have no intention at all of Henry leaving Melt and coming into the business.
Yeah.
Henry is on our board, and as a board we meet 12 times a year, and Henry's a wonderful contributor in that forum. But he's very independent. So we get to benefit from Henry's view about our business at a board level, but not on an operational level. And Henry has this amazing opportunity, thanks to the work he does with Simon Kadachi in that group, to expand his own business philosophy and development. So we're really comfortable. We know Henry's in a great place.
Yeah.
And fingers crossed.
Yeah.
One day he may come into us full time.
Yeah. You went out and did your own thing in London, as you mentioned early on. Victoria, worked at Parisi's and other spots. Henry's out now doing his thing at Simon's group there. How important do you think it is for generations or up-and-coming family members to go out and get experience outside the family business, perhaps before they come back in?
Yes, I know that the Cooper's model is that the family need to work outside of the brewery to have a job in the brewery, and I see the great merit in that. We're nowhere near as big as that, nor are we, as we don't just have the longevity yet that they've had. We intend to. And so, against that background, we want to ensure we deeply embed we have 68 staff, in our people, our values, for them to interpret their way. We are not, and Andrew, I must acknowledge you in this too, in the way you've worked with us. We're very protective of our own ethos, our own vision, and our own strategy to deliver on it. And you've talked to me about the need to be courageous in defending our own position. So we do that, and we do that very strongly. People may have a very strong idea about we should go there, but if there is not where we see ourselves going, we have the strength as a group to ignore that.
Yeah.
And respectfully, we think every day about Gandhi. We have Gandhi in our office as a strong visual presence, because he said, if you focus on purpose, outcome takes care of itself.
Yeah.
And we know that when we've gone wrong is when we've looked at outcome, not purpose.
Yeah.
And so we wrote a 3-word phrase for our purpose, which is exceptional food experiences.
Yeah.
And that's everywhere in our business, but everywhere in our behaviour. And if you have a moment, I'll show you my tattoo.
Oh, I'm not sure. It's a family show, so we might do that for another time. But I think it's fantastic, and I think you're so right. And I talk to a lot of clients about this. The ones I work in the advisory, but just also my personal coaching clients. The importance of values and the behaviours that sit behind those values just have to be such a core foundation pillar to everything that you do. Otherwise you've got no moral compass to go forward. Now, how do you get that through your broader team? I get that it's probably easier with the family because you live it and breathe it. Every morning, lunch, dinner together as a family. But for a new recruit that comes in, how do you demonstrate that? How do you teach them what Taylor & Holmes is about?
There are 2 parts to it. The first part is to describe meaningfully, realistically, and passionately what we're here to do. And we don't assume that everyone who applies for a job with us does know. They know hospitality, but they don't necessarily know the way we do it because we are reinventing it. So we tell a story, and we tell it, we hope, we don't use the word passion, we use the word devotion, but we tell it with devotion to what we're about and the manner in which it can be delivered. The second thing we do is something I learned from a British Army lieutenant. I've never met him, but I read this amazing piece. He had recently returned from a war zone, and he said, the belief that human beings rise to the occasion is a complete fallacy. He said that never happens. What people do under pressure is compress to the level of their training and their character. We can't help anyone outside of our family around character. That's not our role. We can with training. And I was always of the belief that we'd write a really great training session. We'd get everyone together. We'd have a really stimulating hour, something to eat and drink, and we'd be done. And it's not true.
No, it's not.
You've got to do it again and again. This British Army lieutenant said, you cannot overtrain a soldier to take apart their AK-47 rifle that's jammed, fix it, put it back together, in the dark, in the rain, being shot at. No. Said, you cannot overtrain for that. And hospitality can, at times, be like that. So that's our thing. Tell a really good story in a greatly relevant, meaningful way, again and again and again.
And I mean, it really has to start and stop with, you and Kate and Tori in the business as the family and as the leaders to demonstrate that. How do you find in there's situations where you guys perhaps slip in your behaviour or your focus or, around those values? How do you manage that? Because, your team can't ever get any better at this than what you are. So, how do you self-regulate in that space?
With kindness. By that I mean, it is going to happen. Everyone is going to fail. So it gets back to that whole notion of being safe. And I haven't met anyone who doesn't know when they've made a mistake at work. I mean, private life is a whole different thing, as I can testify. But in work, people know when they've made a mistake. They don't need to be belted for that. I don't mean physically, I mean emotionally. They know. And we've found that kindness is the great growth medium, if you like. We also, when we talk kindness to our people, we use that wonderful line from Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, where two gangsters are about to go off and shoot someone awfully. And one says to the other, I'm a very kind person, but never mistake kindness for weakness. So without the gangster bit, we use that all the time.
No, well, it's interesting, like the cult movie themes that are coming out here. Or describe Love Actually as a cult movie in its own right at Christmas, and now Pulp Fiction. So, we're learning more and more about your character all the time here. You were in advertising and marketing, and you went off and you had quite a successful corporate career and your own consulting business. So, tell us, how did you get back into the family business? Like, what drew you back in?
It was a combination of two things. Firstly, I was never a great success in advertising as a business. I loved it. We're 40 years in it, and it really consumed me day and night. The it of that not being the business part, but the creative and strategic part. And I had some extraordinary, and still do, mates and mentors in that. Guys like Kim Bowman, Andrew Kelly and Pete Withy were fantastic guides to my development in advertising. I realised that businesses grow through ideas being implemented really well. Ideas don't necessarily have to end up as an ad. And so I was going through that process of changing the business of outthinking and spending half of my time in Taylor Holmes. We were growing really strongly and really quickly on the strength of the business. And we got to a point where we needed someone in the business and running the business full time. Andrew, I got the job. Can you believe that?
Did you actually have to go through a formal application?
It was frightening. It was shocking. Did a very good proposal, though, I thought.
Yeah. So you managed to fool the board into giving you a role.
I did. It was a great moment for me.
Tell me, you mentioned before your board. So, you've got the family board that you meet, you meet once a month. Tell me about the board, who sits on it, what's the framework of how that works, decisions, all those sort of things.
Indeed. So we have at the moment the 5, if you like, hobby families. So Kate, Tori, her partner Wesley James, Henry and myself. Mm-hmm. Then we have Greg Burford, who's our external accountant.
Yeah.
We have George Wilson, who's an external advisor to us.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have a young man called Andrew Matner, who's going to join us this year. Our purpose in that is to think differently. I mean, we do understand the role of a board, we do understand the responsibility of it, but what we believe is that we have this 1 3-hour opportunity a month to think differently, behave differently, and get an outcome from it. And the outcome is a strategy to implement, to measure, and to decide on doing more or less of that.
Yeah. So a lot of it's around governance and strategic thought and the disciplines of doing that in your thought process and then your execution.
Yes. We definitely quarantine governance in that meeting. So we end with a smaller group just to say, are we exactly where we should be? Mm-hmm. Are we performing correctly? Are we meeting our obligations? Is our governance robust? So we do isolate the two. The first part of the meeting is creative development and strategic implementation of where we're at. Then the finance and governance is the last bit.
Yeah, cool. You mentioned some of the people that you'd worked with before, some people that have helped you in your career. You mentioned, external accountant and so forth there on your board. In terms of your own role as CEO, do you have a mentor? Do you have other people that you lean on? I know you know a lot of people, so how does that work for you?
I do consider I have 2 mentors, but neither of them are. The first group of mentors, I should explain, is a group of people that I have known and worked with, and who have had a remarkable impact on the way I think and act.
Yeah.
And I think about those groups of men and women every day. Depending on what I'm dealing with at the time will depend on who I think. My question is, what would Stephen Trigg do about this, or Warren Randall, or Anita Roddick, or a whole lot of other people? Yeah. And I find that really helpful. It's helpful to me because I do know those people who I draw on really well, and I do have an understanding of what they would do, and then I decide.
Yeah,
I don't ever want to surrender my decisions to someone else's ownership.
Yeah,
because I don't want to place blame. We don't ever deal in blame.
Yeah.
So I think about those people all the time. The second mentor is a relatively new idea, and I have to thank Matthew McConaughey for that, or McConaughey, I'm not quite sure.
McConaughey.
Thank you. Yeah. His amazing book called Green Lights.
Yeah.
And from that, when he won the Academy Award, he thanked a whole series of people, and he finished by thanking one of his heroes, and his hero was who he would be in 10 years' time. For me, my favourite mentor is who I'll be in 5 years' time. And I try and put myself in that position of thinking not just ahead, but at a higher level than I'm thinking currently.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book, Green Lights. I mean, I just finished, listening to it recently myself, and just to have him narrate it, and is probably the least likely source of a development book or a coaching book that I would have ever thought. What were some of your other key takeaways out of that?
Just the whole notion of green lights. I'm so intrigued by having never thought of the fact that you can identify things in your life, things that happened to you or decisions you made, As red light, it stopped everything.
Yeah.
Orange, it was, caution,
Yeah.
proceed. Green light, you just roar on ahead.
Yeah.
And that's been really, really important. The other thing, I have great respect for his larrikinism.
Yeah.
He's this combination of, at times, I hope he's not listening.
Well, maybe if we could, promote it, we'll send him a coffee.
That'd be great. But he drinks and he has taken drugs. I don't think he does anymore. He has great abandon for life. He's a dedicated Christian. He's a good time guy. It's just this extraordinary combination of all sorts of different values. And I think, wow, that's got its own energy. A life like that has its own purpose. I often think of Coco Chanel, who created a whole lot of criticism in Paris in the beginning of her career because she was so avant-garde and she did really, I'm not sure how you say it, but she stuck it up the traditional fashion people. So she got a lot of criticism.
Yeah.
And when fronted with the criticism, she would say, I don't care what you think about me.
Yeah.
I never think about you.
Yeah.
And I love that independence and that strength.
It's about being true to yourself.
Yeah.
And your own performance benchmark is around where you want to be positioned or how you want to be perceived. You can't control what anybody else does or how they think or what they do. So I think that's a great analogy in terms of what you described there. I particularly like the green lights stuff where, normally you'd think of a bad experience or something negative happening in your life as a red light or it created a totally different perception. Well, everything doesn't have to go swimmingly, but something bad or something, a crisis can actually be a green light for something better. So I think there's some great lessons in that book. Talking about obstacles, not everything's beer and Skittles in business. We all know that. We go through ups and downs. You guys are in hospitality and have been through one of the most traumatic years ever. From 12 months ago till now. Talk about your experience through COVID and some other obstacles that you guys have been through and how you've tackled them.
Andrew, to answer that, can I go back to something you just made because it became the key to what we did? That very good point of yours about you've got to trust yourself is so powerful. And what I learned is to trust myself, I had to know myself.
Yeah.
And in knowing myself, I realised I had a whole quite long list of limiting self-beliefs. And COVID was the opportunity to reinvent everything. And that's the terminology we use. It's time to reinvent. If we want to get through this, we have to reinvent hospitality.
Yeah.
To reinvent what we do, we have to reinvent ourselves.
Yeah.
And to reinvent, we have to know. And so the thing that was always I think the thing that holds anyone back is what they believe they're capable of. And so we and I invested time in that. Again, COVID gave us that time. We were closed for that 6 weeks, I think it was, and that unleashed an amazing amount of time. The things that we knew were exactly where we were at say the end of March last year, and we knew with great clarity and emotion where we wanted to be.
Yeah.
So it's simply a matter of charting a course. And you probably know, I think you may have told me about this phenomenon known as the Gestalt Effect, where if you put three minds into a room, three people thinking the same way or for the same objective, 1 + 1 + 1 equals like 11,000, and we had that going on.
Yeah.
So with Kate, Tori, Henry, and Wesley James, our son-in-law,
and extra family member just evolved. Yeah,
we're 6 now.
Yeah.
We had these amazing sessions, and I learned a lot about conducting an environment in which people really do go outside of the norm, and it didn't include any illicit substances or alcohol even. It just became this thing called flow.
Yeah.
Because we shared the common goal, and we thought of things that were really powerful, and which did an immediate job of maintaining some revenue in COVID, but then changed us so that the position we're in now reflects some of those decisions we made then. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
In that we decided that COVID was an opportunity, not a problem.
Yeah. So in a sense, COVID became almost a green light for you.
It was.
In its own way.
Great point.
Where a lot of people would have seen it as a red light and have used it as a forum to complain about how bad things are. You've looked at it and said, okay, well, what opportunity can we create of this? How can we reinvent ourselves and generate either new revenue streams or new opportunities that perhaps you wouldn't have otherwise seen in the grind of the day-to-day?
Yes, very much.
That's excellent. So talk about, you said there about this clear focus about where you guys are going as a business family that you described before. So what are some of those goals? What does the future, self look like 5 years from now? What have you got left to achieve here, mate? What's the plan?
Andrew, I deeply respect your commitment to goals and how you educate me around that. And some of this is contrary to what I've learned from you. Our major goal is a question. The question is, how high can we fly? And it's not meant to be, boisterous or arrogant. It's a genuine, how high could we fly? Because if we said, look, we want to be this many $1 million of revenue on this date, who's to say that's not a limiting thing as opposed to an enriching thing?
Yeah.
So what we say is, we believe the talent collectively, we definitely have the devotion, we have the energy to take a lot of things on. So by that I mean a lot of growth initiatives. Yeah. And so we have a mind collectively that's open to something turning up on our door one day and someone says, have a look at this. We, as you know, monitor our financial performance daily. So we always have a good understanding of where we are with that.
Yeah.
Therefore, it allows me particularly the room to say, okay, I will have a look at that opportunity.
Yeah.
Then we do a feasibility study.
Yeah.
Then we negotiate terms around a trial period of this new venture.
Yeah.
Then we see what will happen.
Yeah.
And we continue that cycle. So whilst Katie and I as a couple have financial goals clearly established and monitor our performance, we push them aside in the business context to say, let's see. Let's see how high we can fly.
Yeah.
But we put a lot of discipline on that as well, because not every opportunity, be it a new product to put into our existing business or take on another business, not all of them are gold.
Yeah.
So we're very cautious but optimistic.
Yeah. So what are some of I call them decision filters. What are some of these decision filters that you run these opportunities or products or whatever it might be through before you rule them out? There's probably obvious ones like location and other bits and pieces. But what's some of the other things that you look at when you're working out whether these things are good or good or bad?
Two major criteria we always work with. Firstly, the people. Who is it that has brought this opportunity to us?
Yeah.
And so far, they're almost always a landlord. So who are they? Not by name, but by character, by their own goodwill.
Yeah.
Secondly, and both of these are very ethereal, I know. Secondly is, how does this feel? And when we get an opportunity, my first thing is to sit quietly in that place, be it a building site or a fully formed basement north terrace, and just get a feeling.
Yeah.
Like, is this good space or bad? And please excuse me for sounding a bit weird about that. But Kate's taught me that.
Yeah.
Women have this heightened intuition and this heightened sense of things more than the obvious.
Yeah.
So we get a feeling for the place, a feeling for the people. And if either of those are negative, we go no further with it, regardless of what else might be going on.
Yeah.
So they're our first two criteria. Then everything is then the measuring stick we use is historically what's happened there. Is it good? Secondly, will that place take what we do? We use an analogy where we believe that the DNA of our business or the IP of it is clearly defined, and we see that as a seed. And we say to potential new opportunities, our business model is to take your environment, plant our cafe, restaurant or hospitality seed in it, and allow those two to grow in harmony. So we don't impose ourselves on a venue, but nor do we seek them to impose themselves on us.
Okay.
And there is a sweet spot. There always has been.
So, I really like this when it comes back and you're drawing on Dennis Denuto from the Castle. You're talking about the vibe of a place, which then, that vibe or that feel comes back to basically a landlord or somebody's aligned values with where you are. And I guess if those things aren't lined up, the environment won't let that seed grow.
Yes.
That's a great story. Or it's just a great framework to go about it. And so it's not necessarily about numbers or this, that, or whatever. If it doesn't, pass that field test at the start, then it just doesn't go any further.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And to your point earlier, we need to be strong about that. That's trusting ourselves, our instinct, going, we're good at this. The formula works.
Yeah.
So that becomes a discipline in itself.
Yeah, cool. Mate, do you have a life motto?
I do. I wish I'd written it. Michelangelo did when he said the greater danger is not that we aim too high and miss, but that we aim too low and hit.
Yeah.
And that's it. For me, that's a combination of fear and opportunity.
Yeah.
I would hate to think, oh gosh, we just went too low.
Yeah.
We got it, but went too low.
Yeah.
So it is loose enough, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, it's beautifully done, but it's loose enough to apply to any given opportunity.
Yeah. So, and it sort of extends to, it's about being comfortable, being uncomfortable.
Great term. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, it's accepting that it's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. So, mate, thank you. This has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the chat. Thanks very much.
Thank you. It's a real privilege, Andrew. And while I have the opportunity, thank you for all you do and have done for us. It is invaluable. Everyone should have an Andrew Mattner.
Thank you, mate.
Cheers, mate. Thank you. Hello, I'm Greg Hobby from Taylor Holmes. Thanks for joining us on The Little Black Book. Everyone should have one.